All right, before we dive into this, let me just say this straight. Dungeon Rampage is one of those indie games that looks harmless on the surface, but once you start digging into it, you realize it's way more intense, way more dynamic, and way more skill-based than you expect. So if you've been searching for a dungeon crawler that doesn't just hold your hand, but actually pushes you to improve, to adapt, to survive, keep watching, because this one honestly surprised me in the best way. Dungeon Rampage is basically a fast-paced, top-down action dungeon crawler, but with a twist. It's not your typical slow, deliberate crawl where you shield block your way through hallways. This one is chaotic, aggressive, and more reactive. The whole game pushes you to keep moving, to dodge constantly, to use your abilities at the right moment, and to read enemy behavior instead of just button mashing. And the first thing that really stood out to me is how satisfying the combat feels. It's fast, but not messy. It's intense, but never overwhelming. You always feel like you have just enough control to survive, but not enough to relax. And that's the sweet spot. The design of the dungeons is procedural, so every run feels a little different. Sometimes you get a layout that lets you breathe, sometimes you get tight corridors filled with enemies waiting around corners, and sometimes the game basically throws a mini war zone right in your face as soon as you open the next door. And I actually like that unpredictability. It keeps you alert, it keeps things fresh, and it makes every run feel like its own adventure instead of a scripted sequence. One thing that I really appreciate is that the game doesn't shy away from making enemies dangerous. Even the basic ones can take you down quickly if you play sloppy. They move fast, they flank you, some even have unpredictable attack patterns that punish you if you try to stand still. And the bosses, man, the bosses are genuinely fun. They're not copy-paste bullet sponges. They have phases, mechanics, tells, weaknesses. You can't just blast them down, you have to actually learn how they behave. And when you finally beat one after multiple failed attempts, it feels earned. The game mixes melee combat, ranged attacks, dodging, and special abilities in a surprisingly smooth way. Dodging in particular feels great. It's responsive, snappy, and it's basically the core of survival. If you're the type of player who likes being super mobile, always dashing around, threading through enemy attacks, and responding instantly, this game rewards that style heavily. But what's cool is that you can also lean into different builds depending on your gear. Some setups encourage aggressive close combat, others focus on hitting from distance, and some let you play almost like a rogue-like mage, throwing abilities non-stop. The variety isn't infinite, but it's definitely enough to keep things interesting. Speaking of builds, the gear system is simple but effective. You gather loot, you upgrade weapons, you modify abilities, and that small sense of progression between each run is enough to keep you coming back. This isn't a deep, full RPG with hundreds of stats. It's more streamlined, but in a good way. You never feel overwhelmed with menus, but you still have meaningful choices. And what I like is that the gear doesn't just change numbers, it often changes how you actually fight. A weapon that gives you a longer dodge window will literally change your rhythm in combat. A weapon with a faster charge attack might push you to play more aggressively. It's really satisfying when these small details actually matter. Visually, Dungeon Rampage has a clean, stylized look that's easy on the eyes, but still bursting with personality. The environments are sharp, colorful, and readable, which is important when the combat gets chaotic. Enemy attacks are clearly telegraphed, spell effects look flashy without turning the screen into a mess, and everything feels polished. The art style is somewhere between cartoony and gritty, which creates this fun mix of charm and brutality. It doesn't try to be realistic, it tries to be expressive, and it succeeds. The enemy animations are surprisingly good. They don't feel stiff. Everything moves with this kind of punchiness and control that makes attacks feel impactful. And the sound design really sells the hits. Heavy slashes, explosive attacks, crunchy impacts. You can actually feel the weight of your strikes, which elevates the gameplay. The music fits the experience too. It's energetic, rhythmic, and pushes you into that fast-paced mindset. It's not over the top, but it blends nicely with the combat flow, almost like background adrenaline. One thing I really appreciate is how the game handles difficulty. It's challenging, but not in a frustrating way. You're punished for mistakes, but it always feels fair. You always know why you died, and you always feel like you could have played better. That's the core of good game design and action titles. When you die, you don't think, wow, that was stupid game design. You think, okay, I messed that up. And that keeps you invested instead of annoyed. The game is primarily single player, and honestly, I think that's perfect for the tone. It feels like a personal, skill-based journey where you slowly master movement, timing, and survival. Co-op could be fun in theory, but it would change the balance completely. Dungeon Rampage is built around tight, reactive combat, the kind where you learn enemy patterns, dodge at the last moment, and pull off perfectly timed attacks. Doing that with multiple players would either make it too easy or too chaotic. The solo focus feels right. As you progress, the dungeons get deeper, the enemies evolve, and the traps become nastier. The game introduces new mechanics gradually, and every new area has its own vibe. New themes, new traps, new enemy types, new hazards. Some dungeons have flame traps that activate in patterns. Others have spikes that trigger when you run too fast. Others are full of environmental hazards that force you to reposition constantly. It keeps the gameplay loop fresh. There's also this nice layer of exploration between fights. Treasure rooms, hidden corridors, breakable walls, small secrets. Little things that reward players who take their time instead of rushing blindly. And when you find something rare or unexpected, it actually feels exciting. Boss arenas are also a highlight. They're wide, dynamic, and usually filled with environmental mechanics you have to pay attention to. You're not just fighting the boss, you're navigating the arena while doing it. It feels cinematic without needing big cutscenes or fancy storytelling. The story itself is light. It's there, but the game definitely prioritizes gameplay over narrative. And honestly, that's fine. Dungeon Rampage isn't trying to be a long, emotional RPG. It's trying to be a tight, replayable dungeon crawler full of action, speed, and satisfying combat. And it nails that identity. But what makes this game shine is the pacing. No run feels too long. No encounter feels like filler. Every room gives you something to react to. A new enemy type, a trap layout, a movement challenge. You're constantly engaged. And the best part is how the game makes you feel when you're fully in the zone. When you're dodging everything, chaining combos, repositioning perfectly, landing hits at the right time, you feel like an absolute god of the dungeon. That flow state is addictive, and it's one of the biggest reasons Dungeon Rampage works so well. Overall, Dungeon Rampage is one of those indie games that might slip past people if they don't pay attention, but it absolutely deserves recognition. It's polished, it's fun, it's challenging, and it has a very strong identity. The combat is tight, the progression loop is satisfying, the visuals are clean and expressive, and the replayability is solid. If you love fast-paced action games, this one should definitely be on your radar. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.